Alright, welcome back. We're going to be playing another game of chess here with the rapid time control as we have normally done in these videos. So let's search for a game here and see what we get. And we're searching within the mid-1800s ELO range here. So looks like we get about that, and we're playing with the white pieces here. So we play the king's pawn opening as our repertoire is, and now we can play d4. And this is moving into a Caro-Kann defense here. And what I play against the Caro-Kann is called the Panov attack again. So let's take first, initiating the exchange variation, and then play c4, which moves into the Panov attack here. And now our opponent is caught thinking here on the fourth move. So knight c6 is a variation of the Panov attack that transposes into the Alapin Sicilian here. So first, to begin this transposition, you take, and then you defend this pawn here by playing knight f3. And we will see how our opponent chooses to continue here. All right, we have bishop to g4, and the idea is, of course, that they're pinning our knight to our queen, but here we have the move knight c3. And this is all still within my opening preparation here. Knight c3 counter-attacking the opposing queen. And this can go into a line where he takes on f3, we take the queen, they take the queen, and then we fork here. And it depends where the king goes, but the line continues on from there. And we'll see if we get a game featuring this line. But there's a lot of ways to quickly lose from here as well in this position if they don't know what they are doing. And knight c6 is not a book response to the Panov attack for sure. So he might be left with he might be left in the open here trying to figure this out for himself as he goes along. And that's where you want your opponents to ideally be. So now we have the move d5 here. Definitely, we have the move d5. And then we notice that after we clear away this knight, we can simply pin the bishop here, or pin the queen to the king after this knight moves. So there's going to be serious consequences here. Let's say rook moves to d8 here. We can still take because our queen is defended by the knight here. And we will be up material here already. This line is essentially, he has already lost here, essentially. Lost material. And with it, probably the game. And this is only like six to 8 moves into the Panov attack here. So this is how potent it can be. If they don't play like a book line, they transpose into an Alapin. And this is like a really dubious variation of the Alapin. This you can get crushed really quickly as black if you do not know like precise moves to play here. In this central exchange line of the Alapin. All right, so we do have castling. We have castling, and now we can simply take here, actually, because after queen takes, we can take back with a knight here, and then we're simply just up material, and that is probably the fastest way to win this material. We could even play bishop b5 because they cannot take with a queen here. But then maybe a6. Let's calculate bishop b5. I mean, there's not much. a6, takes, and then he takes at the end of the line. So I think simpler is just to avoid distraction here. Just take the knight, and now this. Okay, obviously, and now we can simply play bishop to d2 here, defending or breaking the pin, I guess I should say. Bishop d2, interposing a piece between our queen and this rook here, is what I'm trying to say. And then if we have a trade here, we can simply take back with the queen and with the pawn, and we're up +2. We might have kind of some issues with our pawn structure, but that doesn't matter with the amount of material we'll be up here. So essentially, this is already lost from our opponent's perspective. We have e6. Yeah, I think now all we have to do is just, I mean, we could play rook c1, we can play bishop e2, or we could even consider bishop b5. But let's play rook c1. Setting up, obviously, a one-move threat of moving the knight, to which he essentially has to respond here. And then we can play bishop e2 and just castle, get our king to safety. All right, now we can play bishop e2. And simply castle. We'll keep this stupidly simple here and try to exchange down now and simplify the game as much as we possibly can. Will be the strategy that I use from here on. I guess, no, I didn't have a tactic there. I was looking at this and considering, well, what if bishop f4 here revealed check? But he can simply block with the bishop on d6. So I don't think that would work necessarily here. I don't think a check on f4 would work to win material. I think maybe now, since we have a bishop on e2, we could consider like knight e5 though. Making like an octopus knight here, but then we have to consider the ramifications of queen takes g2. So I think that's going into unnecessary complications there a little bit early. I think we can castle first and then consider this plan of just using our knight to tear apart this position tactically here. So we will see how our opponent plays here. They are, I would say, stalling a little bit, and this is an issue you can run into maybe if you play time controls this long, but the reason I play time controls this long is so I can maybe have time to think, of course, for the video, and also to offer my analysis as I go along. Normally when I'm playing alone, I maybe wouldn't use this long on my moves, but I think castling now is keeping it very straightforward. We castle, get our king to safety so we're not in danger of getting checkmated here. And now knight e5 comes with like legit threats here, because bishop takes runs into, we take the queen first with check. So that doesn't work. He probably has to move the queen and then we can capture this bishop here. So knight e5 is the direct one move threat. Something that would defend against it is bishop d6. But then we can use, okay, so this I don't think defends against this threat. Unless there is something I'm missing. So knight e5. And now we hit these two pieces. Bishop takes does not work because we take the queen with check and then recapture. So he essentially, he has to move his queen, and I don't think he can move it to a spot which adds defense to this bishop. So I think this bishop is actually just now falling. However, that's not the end of the calculation here. We have to notice that our queen also protects this bishop here. So something like this, this, this. We have to be careful that our queen doesn't get overloaded here in the defense of these two pieces. So it depends where his queen drops back to, I guess I should say. If his queen drops back to like here, I mean, we may have to go with something like this, but we'll see. We'll see where his queen drops back to here. But at a minimum, this is forcing simplification quite rapidly here, which is massively in our favor. So we have our opponent taking his time here. I think queen d6 is probably the best attempt by black at prolonging this game. But at this point, unfortunately, kind of all roads are leading to Rome, probably here. I think it is an untenable position for black to play. And we've only used like a minute of our clock here just because of the opening preparation gone a little bit. So this is, yeah, you can win very, very quickly with the Panov. So yeah. And here I was calculating knight takes, bishop, of course. Queen can take on d2, and then after that we can take the queen and then take the knight. And then everything, I think, wait, actually is our bishop hanging? Maybe let's do, I think, here. Somehow this line still works, I think. Because I think we take, instead of queen takes queen, after queen to d2, I think we take the knight, and then the queen has to take our queen or something. I don't know why this is popping up, but it's funny. All right, so queen takes, I'll use the arrows here, knight takes, and the queen cannot really take any other piece here, so it has to take our queen. Right, so queen, so knight takes, queen takes here, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, pawn takes, and then we can go rook to d7 here. So I think this is the correct move to simplify here. Maybe queen takes b2 is a way to try to complicate it, but then we have something like queen here. Okay, so yeah, he takes a knight. Now we can take the queen for sure. We can also play like rook here. So we do not offer up our second rank here. Is it definitely a way to play this? Let's see, queen takes, rook takes, bishop here, rook takes. Then we can play rook, well, rook here. No, that would be a blunder. I'm worried about if rook c2, queen moves, let's say here. Then where is our queen going, for instance? So we could actually play queen c2, and that kind of eliminates that problem. So I think this is a way to do it. And we defend the bishop again. We add a defender. So the only reason I didn't take was because it was a little bit unfavorable to let the black rook onto my second rank here. So I want to trade on my own terms, essentially. I definitely want to trade, but I don't want to trade unfavorably, if that makes sense. And our opponent is now down to 3 minutes. All right, we have this queen to g5 attempt, and I think what he's going to do now, I mean, we can probably easily predict this, is a rook to g8 maneuver. So what we can first do is put our bishop on f3, which is probably a diagonal our bishop wants to be on anyway. And then we could play like queen to e4 here, setting up our own battery in a sense. So bishop to f3. And then we can set up our own battery with also an attack on the bishop here. Kind of devastating since it's a dark squared bishop here. So he can try something like rook d2, but then this comes like with even more devastating effect. And by being on this diagonal, a side effect of that, which is very nice, is that we guard our g2 pawn and any chance of checkmate as well with that. So down to 2 minutes of thinking time for our opponent here. All right, he's guarding the e4 square, which is solid. Now we can play something like rook d1, just looking for an exchange of rooks. So rook f to d1 is what I'm looking at. And preventing any ideas of the rook getting to d2. I guess we could have gone for queen b3 as well. It's something I missed. Just like x-raying checkmate here, but we can still now do this here. We can x-ray checkmate through the bishop. And this is devastating here, because the queen can move back here to defend the bishop and both threats here. But then there is certainly ways we can proceed from here. There is certainly other ways to proceed. So yeah, the queen drops back. We can play a3 here, just kicking away the bishop. And then look to jump in our knight somewhere here. Somewhere towards the opponent's king. Alright, we have the bishop dropping back here. Now we can play knight b5. Here. We're eyeing these squares and also proposing a rook trade at the same time. And then look to get our rook in here. Or our knight in. Maybe after takes, then we can go here and add a third attacker to these squares. So we can definitely, we can just play this immediately. The problem with that is the rook exchange leaves our knight undefended, so that is why I probably will exchange rooks first and then play this. Or maybe even a move like this. Well, let's just re-centralize our queen here first. Play this ultra simple, ultra safe. Re-centralize our queen. Go for the trade and material here. And we're blocking this square from having access. Alright, so now we can still trade here, obviously. So we can't take because it's defended by the bishop. But we can step away here. And allow our opponent to take. All right. Now we have something like queen here. Re-centralize the queen yet again and look to trade. All right, let's play here first. right, and let's guard these pawns. Play here. And simply move our king up here. And the king is blocked from using any squares essentially here on our green side. So let's go here. And create our own passed pawn. Let's go here. In order to still cut off the king's way into the queen side here. And then advance. Yeah, our pawns. Let's go here. I mean, there's several ways to go about this, but we can go here, attempting to win this pawn. Okay, we win this pawn here. And now we can prevent the king again from getting back down here this way. And we can simply advance this pawn and promote. So something like this, defending this pawn, and then getting our bishop out of the way. And now this promotion is unstoppable. Okay. So that is our game, the Panov transposed into an Alapin here. So let's go into an analysis here. If we are allowed to. So analysis. So again, this game started from a Caro-Kann. So e4, c6, and then d4, d5. Takes is the Caro-Kann exchange variation. And after it takes back, I play c4, which is a Panov attack, also known as the Panov-Botvinnik. Knight c6 is a sideline which transposes into the Alapin. Luckily for me, I play the Alapin, so I'm very familiar with this line, and it's an incredibly, actually, tactical line, where after taking, the queen takes, and then the best move here is knight f3. And after bishop to g4, which is the best response that our opponent found, knight c3 is the tactic that basically leads this into a very sharp line. So after this, the opponent basically is obligated to take on f3 and then take the queen if they want to avoid losing on the spot, essentially. And any other move other than bishop takes the knight on f3 essentially loses here. After queen to d7 here, you just have d5. d5 is a great move. It's the only move that leads to just an absolutely winning position here, because there's no way now essentially to avoid the loss of material. So after castling, the simplest way and the best way, I guess, to go about this was just taking, which I found. And then the queen steps out of the way, revealing an attack on my queen. And now queen b3 definitely was good. I blocked the bishop d2, and then bishop e2, or rook c1 first is what I played, yeah. Bishop e2 in order to castle. And then we have knight f6, and then castle here. And we're just up a massive amount of material in exchange, but also the position here is great for white. And after this, bishop to b4, it allows knight e5 here. So we're still pushing to play the most precise moves we can play here. Queen d6, I think, was precise. Yeah, I didn't consider bishop f4 here. Was an interesting response, just removing. Let's see what Stockfish gives. Bishop f4, bishop takes e2. So bishop f4, bishop takes e2, knight takes e2, g5, and then knight c6 check. That's a ridiculous line. But anyways, I played, I think, knight takes, yeah, g4, which is still fine. And then queen takes, knight takes f6 is the most accurate here. And then after takes, queen c2, yeah, just getting out of the way and defending my second rank here. The queen moves out, bishop f3, in order to get this one move threat, queen e4 here. And then here, yeah, queen b3 was definitely a knockout move that I missed. He still had something like queen back to e7 here, but I played rook f to d1, going for a trade. The rook steps out, and then queen b3, I guess here was kind of, I mean, it was fine, just a little bit later than it could have been. Queen back to e7, now a3, bishop back to a5, and Stockfish lies queen a4. I did knight b5. Rook takes c8, re-centralize my queen, d3, and then, yeah, queen back to c3, rook takes, and we trade down into a very simplified winning position here. So after this, we re-centralize our queen once again, looking to trade here. And this allows it, so we check, force off the traded material, and now you can see that 2 pieces against 1 piece is much simpler than something like 6. I guess here technically we have 7 pieces v 6 pieces, right? So if you have 2v1, that makes it much more easy to play than like a 6 versus 7, if that makes sense. So that is the theme of this whole game, is just simplification after we've achieved a winning advantage here. So we simplify successfully after knight takes queen. And now it's the endgame, so what do we target? We target pawns. So knight takes this pawn, b3, but knight c3 defends the pawn. And then g3, and we advance here. So we look to promote. So, yeah. And this is just a completely winning endgame. Bishop here. And the king guards the last pawn here. And that is essentially the end of the game there. So, yeah, that was a pretty good game from our opponent, but he essentially lost it in the opening, and we continued to convert that advantage throughout the whole game there. I guess I can go over kind of again. I've gone over this transposition in a previous video, but I can go into an analysis, I guess, of the real line here, of the real line of the barman defense. So let me pull out actually my notes here on the barman. Let's see. Sicilian Alapin attack. And then there's actually, I'll show a couple things. So e4, then c5, c3 obviously is the Alapin Sicilian defense. And after d5 takes, d4 takes, and then knight c6 and knight f3, we have the exact same position from the Panov attack, right, that we had in the game here. So it was just a different opening that transposed into the same position here. It's called a transposition. And bishop g4 is the move here. But after knight c3, which is the response we played in the game, bishop takes is basically required here for the opponent, and I can go into that line. So this is the central exchange variation, is what's called, of the barman defense within the Alapin Sicilian attack. So d5, e takes, queen takes, knight f3, bishop g4, knight c3, bishop takes f3. And the actual book response, amazingly, that Stockfish also agrees with, is g takes. And it just looks like you're blundering a pawn here. But what I like to play, and probably what the black player hasn't studied, is actually knight takes d5. Because it's not a book response, it is pretty much equally as good and equally as tricky for black to deal with here. And then what happens here is black will take this this queen here, of course, recapture the queen, and you actually regain the material through a fork here on c7. And the king can move to these different positions here, either to something like d8 or d7, of course. But let's see what my notes say. King d7, it leads into kind of a trap here. And king d7, I think for some reason, more people play because it looks like more natural. But king d8 is technically the more correct move that Stockfish agrees with. But king d7, a lot of people you'll see play this. So of course we take here. And then black has to retreat this bishop. And this leads into kind of an opening trap-like idea here. So what does that mean? We push d5, and now black threatens to deliver a counter fork here, I guess we could call it. And we actually play bishop f4, which looks just like an outright blunder, right? And e5 is the correct way, just sacrificing a pawn to stop this threat, I guess. And it's very hard for players to resist the temptation to deliver this fork here. I mean, who in their right mind besides like 3,600 Stockfish is going to play e5 in this position rather than knight takes? But if e5, of course you take en passant, on peasant, and then f takes, and then probably, I guess, f3, yeah. I don't think I've analyzed this line, actually, which is the proper line. But I know the opening trap within this variation comes after the very natural looking move, knight to c2 check. You go king d2 is forced. Knight takes a1, and then bishop b5 check here. Crisscross applesauce the king in the middle of the board here. And then most players actually will try to get over here to your knight because they think, oh, like I'm one step closer to getting your knight. And here we have essentially an unstoppable mate here. And Stockfish just realized that. Rook c1 check. King has to move back to d8. We have bishop c7. King moves back here. Knight b6. A takes, revealed check here on the king. The knight can block for a tempo. Rook takes on c2, king b8, bishop to d7 here, and then rook to c8 mate is unstoppable no matter what move black plays here. And this is just like a beautiful looking mate here we got on the black king. So that is one of the opening traps within the barman, and it just shows, it goes to show how quickly that someone who's not prepared for the tactics of this line can lose against the barman, like can lose the barman defense within the Alapin Sicilian. So, and if you can get a Caro-Kann player to play this line, they're basically toast if you play the Panov and they go into this line. So I think almost every player that plays the Caro-Kann you can get by transposing it into an Alapin. So I hope you enjoyed that video, found it informative or learned something, and I will see you in the next one.